Hello everyone and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. We are still into the dying minutes of the UEFA Europa League final, which Tottenham are still leading by a goal to nil, thanks to that goal by Brennan Johnson. And we are going to be digesting that and more from that final. So allow us to test these audios and we see if we are at par. Looks like audio is good. Looks like audio is good. Looks like audio is good, but yeah, really. I mean, I wouldn't define that final as an entertaining fixture, but I'll call it for what it was: boring, dull, and things of that nature. In a way, typical of a very underwhelming teams. What we've seen from them across the entire season. We are into the 90th minute of the game. Sorry, the 98th minute of the game, and Spurs are still leading by a goal to nil. I'm sure they are begging for that final whistle to go so that they secure their first Europa League title since the name was changed from the UEFA Cup to the UEFA Europa League. I remember that changed after the 2008, I think 2009 season. So going into 2009-2010 season, that's when it changes. I think I stand to be corrected on that, but that's from what I gather. That's when it does change. So Tottenham Hotspurs still leading by a goal to nil. We are deep into stoppage time. 99th minute of the game, and Spurs are waiting to be crowned champions of the UEFA Europa League. I mean, in any case, they are. In any case, they are. Really, they are because they are in the lead. They are in the lead. Okay. Yes, we are waiting, and it's full time. It's full time. Spurs win it. Spurs win it. I can see somebody here says, "Hola, hola, hi, hello, how are you? Where are you joining us from?" Spurs are Europa League champions. It's official. They've beaten United by goal to nil. Games, hi games. How are you doing? Welcome to the Football Tribe Media channel. Hola. How are you guys doing? Thank you for joining me. Kindly like the broadcast, and also please consider subscribing to the channel if you're new here. Let me know where you're joining us from. Let's have a chat. Hi, some of you, your names are in languages that that are really hard for me to read or pronounce. But Angie Postecoglou said it. I always win a trophy in my second season, and he's done it for Tottenham Hotspurs. So, guys, kindly like the broadcast. Just click on that like button, but also please consider subscribing to the channel if you're new. If you're new here, but it's as good as done. Really, it's as good as done. Unfortunately, so much we are going to hear of Arsenal fans, regardless of whichever way it was bound to finish. 1-0 was the scoreline. Contrary to our own prediction, really. So greetings, LNZ Games, greetings, is it Marilox, something like that? Greetings to you, and thank you for joining the broadcast. So Tottenham are the UEFA Europa League champions after beating Manchester United by a goal to nil, a scrappy goal scored by Brennan Johnson. Game has finished, full-time score 1-0, and Tottenham are champions. I can imagine the anguish, the agony, the tears, the banter, the mockery that's going to revolve around London. Tottenham Hotspur fans are going to mock Arsenal fans. I mean, we're never going to hear the end of it. But and then, in as far as Arsenal fans on the African continent are concerned, I mean, it's good to hear that United have lost because we wouldn't have had the end of it and that kind of thing. I can pinpoint in remembrance of the kind of conversation that has revolved around the final. Rio Ferdinand, overly confident that they could get it over the line, and yet they really lacked the biting teeth, and they really just didn't have it. They really didn't have the biting teeth tonight. You did not feel at one point that United really had that spark moment. Of course, we had a very key moment in the game when Mickey Van de Ven cleared the ball off the line. That was the sort of defining moment of the second half. But beyond that, all the others were average chances, calling Vicario to action because Vicario in that moment misjudged the ball. It was a free kick, I think, brought in by Bruno Fernandes, misjudges the ball, the flight of the ball goes through his hands, and then Amit Van de Ven went to their rescue there, clearing the lines, and it stayed 1-0. Ange Postecoglou, we will never forget those words. I always win something in my second season, and he's done it. He's won something in his second season. So much to the I can only imagine. I can only imagine what kind of a conversation that is going to be around London. Really, really, I'm sure Arsenal fans may want to hide in the subways of London, in in the tunnels of London for the next 1 week, all through the summer until the start of next season and that kind of thing. Because regardless of whatever happens, they've won it. They have a European title in modern days, and Arsenal do not. That's the pain point, and that's how it's going to be for the next one season or so until Arsenal salvage their own reputation. But it is what it is. I can see Arsenal fans already reacting. I'll be honest, I absolutely hate Spurs. I hate everything about the club. However, usually in my second season, I win things. Will go down as one of the coldest football quotes in football history, and that's an Arsenal fan admitting that. That is the quote from Ange Postecoglou that he did say earlier on in the season. And remember, that was when they were still in the Carabao Cup. Had just knocked out Manchester United. I think thereabout. I think they were still in the FA Cup. Was it maybe? And he said, usually in my second season, I win things. And he has guided Tottenham Hotspurs to the triumph of the UEFA Europa League. Tottenham Hotspurs are the champions of the 2024-2025 Europa League season. They have just beaten Manchester United by a goal to nil, a side that had not lost a single game across the entire competition. 14 games they had played, won 9, drawn 5, and yet they scrambled. They fell to a poor Tottenham Hotspur side. Pretty much the game was typical of the quality that they did display. That one is indeed 16th and the other is 17th on the Premier League table. If there's anything you needed to define the final in itself, that was look at the Premier League table, look at where the teams are. The game in itself was boring. It lacked spark. Scrappy goal. Pape Matza providing the assist. A scrappy Brennan Johnson gets a touch on it, hits the back of the net. Beyond the reach of Andre Onana, was too late to the action. Again, Luke Shaw involved there with the handball in leading to that goal, and it goes in. In the first half, in the 42nd minute, and that defined really the final. That was it. That was it. There was no way back for Manchester United. At least they did not create a way back for themselves, and they are now champions of the UEFA Europa League. So there's no way around it. All I wish I could say congratulations. I do not know so many Tottenham Hotspur fans. Maybe one called Nasser, I think he's called Nasser something. He's called, should be called, he's called Nasser. I get his other name. I think Nasser Kushabe is one of the Tottenham Hotspur fans that I do know. But full time, it is Tottenham 1 and Manchester United 0. Key moments of the game, like I said, it was that kind of game. It was that kind of game, really. That kind of game where you struggle to pick key moments of the game. Of course, they take over from Atlanta, who beat up against Bayer Leverkusen last season by 3 goals to 0 to win it. Ademola Lookman scoring a hat-trick in that one. The team with the most titles in as far as the UEFA Europa League is concerned, / UEFA Cup, is Sevilla. They have as many as 7. There's a time they won 3 of them in a row under the charges of Unai Emery. Then Liverpool come with 3, Juventus have 3, Chelsea have won it twice, and all the others that may proceed. But last season it was Atlanta. The season before that it was Sevilla. That's 2022-2023, and I think they beat Manchester United on their way. Possibly, I think they beat Manchester United on their way to the finals. Yes, because in the finals they beat up against Roma 4-1 on penalties. That proceeded a 1-1 draw in normal time. But yes, in the semi-finals they knocked out Juventus, and then Roma knocked out Bayer Leverkusen. But I think that's the same season in which was it the same season when they met Manchester United? Possibly. Then when you rewind it back to 2022, it was Eintracht Frankfurt that won it. Frankfurt were under the charges of Oliver Glasner at the time. They're the ones who won it that year. And then, of course, when you go further back, that's 2021. Villarreal won it. And then when you look back to 2020, it was Sevilla. 2019, it was Chelsea beating up against Arsenal by 4-1 in the finals in Baku. And then 2018, it was Atletico Madrid. 2017, Man United. 2016, 2015, 2014. Those are the 3 consecutive years of Sevilla winning it. Then 2013, it was Chelsea under the charges of Rafael Benitez Maudes, who was in an interim capacity. I think he had succeeded Andrea Villas-Boas, was it? Maybe I stand to be corrected, but no, I think he had succeeded Di Matteo, who had guided Chelsea to the UEFA Champions League title in the year prior. That was in 2012 against Bayern Munich at the Allianz Arena. So, and then when you look back to, when you look back to again 2012, that was Atletico Madrid. 2012 Atletico Madrid, I think they beat up against, yes, 2012 Atletico Madrid, I think beat Athletic Bilbao in the final. Then you had, I think, was it FC Porto in 2011 and that kind of thing. Yes, FC Porto won it in 2011. And then when you further rewind back, 2010 was Atletico Madrid beating up against Fulham 2-1. I think, was it Bobby Zamora who scored for Fulham? I can't remember, but Randama Ofakao scored for Atletico Madrid in that final and that kind of thing. So really. But all I can say is congratulations to any Tottenham fans out there. And I mean, we're not going to get enough of this quote that says, usually in my second season, I win things and he's won something. Enzo Maresca says we are not in the title race. Somebody trying to compare the 2 managers. I mean, so I can see an Arsenal fan posting the same quote. Jesus Christ. Manchester United fans, sorry, we misled you with our predictions, but honestly speaking, I had thought that United would win it, but like the case has been in recent times, goals haven't been too many in these kinds of finals. When you look at the European finals, maybe of course last year we had the 3-0 victory for Atlanta by Leverkusen. Let's try to get the reaction. I mean, that's all everybody is talking about. And Postecoglou's quote that in my second year, I always win things in my second season. That's what everybody Manchester United will lose today. This bastard jinx Workman. I mean, the team in 17th place has beaten a team in 16th place in the finals of the UEFA Europa League to win it. That's it. Tottenham will be in the UEFA Champions League next season. There's no doubt about that. That means the result in itself, what it means is that United could have a recalibration of how they go about the summer transfer window, because it means they do not have UEFA Champions League football. It means they do not have UEFA Europa League football. It means they have no UEFA Conference League football. It means sort of a big dent in terms of their finances, in terms of expectation. That then affects the way they behave in the transfer market, the kinds of players that they are able to afford, then enticing or attracting even the big name players that you have loved to sign, because then when you do not have European football, it becomes a sort of a big question mark. And also where you finished on the Premier League table, you are as low as 16th. That doesn't really look pretty. Yes, you're a big club and all that kind of thing, but really, it doesn't really look good for Manchester United. Remember, Sir Jim Ratcliffe at some point said that if they had not made the decisions that they did make, including have to cut off some employees, cancelling the ambassadorial contract of Sir Alex Ferguson, that the club was bound to go bankrupt, I think, by February, and that kind of thing. So really, that tells you, just last year alone, they made losses to the tune of 113 million pounds. And over the course of the last 3 years, they've made losses to the tune of 300 million pounds. So clearly, they are looking to recover from that. They will need to do some player sales, the likes of Jordan Sancho, who is currently on loan at Chelsea. Chelsea have an obligation to buy for 25 million pounds, but should they refuse to take up that option, they ought to pay Manchester United 5 million pounds for the player to return. Then they do have Anthony, who has done really well at Real Betis. Real Betis are going to be playing in the finals on May 28th against Chelsea in the finals of the UEFA Conference League. Then those are some of the players. Then they do have, of course, Marcus Rashford on loan to Aston Villa, one of the players that they could look to sell and bring in some, money. And the thing about Marcus Rashford is that he's a homegrown player. He came out of the Manchester United academy, so whatever money they sell out of him is typically recorded as profits. So that sort of goes to the positive side of the books. I do not think they can even get half of what they spent to buy Jadon Sancho. No, they will be very lucky to get half of what they spent on signing a player like Anthony and that kind of thing. Really. So really, remember, they are already in pursuit to try and sign Matthias Cunha. That's going to cost them about 62.5 million pounds. Then they want to sign Victor Gyökeres. That would cost them at least 60 million pounds, or at least 58 million pounds. That, with this kind of result, then you do wonder whether that is now still financially feasible for them to go ahead and do. Then they wanted to sign Liam Delap for 30 million pounds. Maybe that one sounds more plausible in the circumstances now that they know they do not have UEFA Champions League football, which means that they won't be getting in those monies from ticket sales, from sponsors, from broadcast rights, and that kind of thing. So it's a huge deal for a team like Manchester United to fail to get UEFA Champions League football. And so, I mean, I agree with Wenger. Europa League winners shouldn't automatically qualify for the UEFA Champions League. That's Paul Chigozi, a Manchester United fan, saying that I agree with Wenger. Europa League winners shouldn't automatically qualify for the Champions League. He's a Manchester United fan. Of course, he says that after they've lost. And then Piers Morgan, a renowned Arsenal fan, says this must be the worst quality game in the history of European football competition finals. Absolutely shocking, and yet one of these useless bunch of wrestlers will be in the next year's Champions League. That's from Piers Morgan. And then this is from Mohamed Salah. Yes, he says he did say he would win in his second season. Congratulations. That's Mohamed Salah. They are tweeting about. Then I want to send my shout outs to Kuku Kasuku Wazabanga, a Manchester United fan, Frank Ntambi, a Manchester United fan, Emeka the Romantic Michiga, a Manchester United fan, Grigory, a Manchester United fan, Paul Chigozi, a Manchester United fan. A shout out to you all, guys. Hard luck. Maybe next time you'll get things right. Hard luck. hang in there. I do know what it means to lose a final, especially on the European continent, because I was alive when we lost 4-1 to Chelsea in Baku in the UEFA Europa League final in 2019. That was Arsenal losing. Horribly. By the way, Pedro, I mean, brilliant in that game. And he's still making things happen at Lazio at 37 years of age. So really, kudos to him. Somebody here says, I was asking about what Ange Postecoglou's game plan for the second half was, because again, it was a boring game. They were, of course, not that they were entitled to go forward, but they weren't committing anything forward. It was a dull game. They kept on making Manchester United players, knock them here, clip them, tackle them, try and disrupt play, cause stops and here and there. A typical Jose Mourinho kind of game. If you are playing a team like Man City or Barcelona or something like that, that's what really Tottenham deployed. So this one says his game plan for the second half was: you are leading, park the bus and play long balls to Solanke and that other guy to chase. Simple. That's a farmer's son. That's what he had to respond about that question of what their game plan was. And I know Tottenham will treat this all weekend. This one says Ofundano movie Omweru. Also, Spurs has won a big trophy before Arsenal. That's Kasuku Kuku Wazabanga saying Spurs has won a big. Now, the funny thing is that it's easy for Manchester United fans to hide their agony behind Arsenal in the form of banter to try and escape their own loss. So we'll really understand. Safa Ali is finally here. Hi, Safa Ali. How are you today? How has been your day? Good to have you back on the channel. You say I supported Manchester United, but they lost. Yeah, unfortunately for you. Now, for me, one, as a football fan, I was typically neutral, but also if I had been pressed in my own context, I wouldn't have loved Manchester United to win for simple reasons. Because the rivalry that exists between Arsenal fans and Tottenham fans in the UK is the equivalent of the rivalry that exists between Arsenal fans and Manchester United fans in Africa. That's the simple explanation for it. And because of those reasons, Arsenal fans from the African continent would rather Spurs win it as opposed to Manchester United. And yet in the UK, it's the direct opposite, but for good reasons. But like we said, it was Arsenal fans were caught between a rock and a hard place. So either way, one of their rivals was going to win it. I was going crazy when Tottenham cleared the ball off the line. Yes, Mickey van de Ven with that goal line clearance. I mean, that was the closest Manchester United came to scoring. I mean, it was a brilliant moment. And the header in the last minutes. Yeah. So really, United tried to push for it, but Spurs were quite conservative in the way they played, especially in the second half. They knew they had the 1-0 lead. They didn't need to open themselves up. They also knew that Manchester United do not have that type of player that is good at breaking up play. Tottenham only took 3 shots. Yeah, they didn't have very many shots on target. In fact, according to those statistics, they had only 1 shot on target. That's Tottenham Hotspurs throughout the game. They had 1 shot on target, 0 off target. They had 6. United had 6 on target, 6 off targets, and then United had an overall ball possession of 73% versus 27% of Tottenham Hotspurs. And this is what I said at halftime, is that United had fallen in the trap because Spurs were happy to concede possession to them. Now, for all the years I've known Manchester United, especially in the post-Fergie era, when you leave them with the ball, they literally do not know what to use with the ball. When they have majority of possession, they do not know what to do with the ball. And that was sort of existent today too. The other thing we proved is that Bruno Fernandes is not a ball-playing dictator. Like, he doesn't dictate play in the midfield. He's good with driving the ball up front and that kind of thing. And providing that final pass and that kind of thing. But in terms of dictating play from the midfield, he's not good with that. He's not in the mold of a David Silva. He's not in the mold of Cesc Fabregas, a Martin Zubimendi, a player like Kevin De Bruyne. He's not in that mold. He's not in that category. He's not a goal scorer. So really, United struggled even when they had the ball. They had majority of the ball and they looked devoid of ideas of what to really do with it. Because if it was Manchester City with majority of that ball, trust me, they were going to pop it around until Tottenham got tired of chasing and maybe at one moment would have opened them up. But it did not happen for Manchester United because, you know, they lacked that player. And again, overall, when I was watching them, I kept on thinking, reflecting on the kinds of players that they had on their bench on the night. And I still couldn't find that kind of player that they could bring on to try and change the way they operated in the midfield. Because Manuel Agate is a holding midfielder. Bruno Fernandes, he's good within the final third spaces. Helping with the first phase of the press and that kind of thing. Space Explorers is back. Good to have you back, Space Explorers. It's been a while since I last had you here, but good to have you back. So they lack that kind of engine player in that midfield. A player like Xavi, a player like Iniesta, a player like Michel Ballack, a player like Steven Gerrard, a player like Luka Modric, a player like Toni Kroos. Manchester United really lack that number 8, a typical number 8 of a player that can help you dictate play once you have possession. That every time you have the ball, they dictate how that ball is distributed, how the ball is moved forward, how you attract, you try to attract the kind of press that would call Spurs to, commit a few numbers up front. They lack that kind of player. United needed a fast and agile striker like Osimhen and Haaland. But you see, even if that were to be true, in the first half, look at Rasmus Højlund. They had him but they literally stabbed him. They literally stabbed him. Even when Joshua Zirkzee came on, the strikers, they were stabbed. They did not have opportunities on the ball. Look at Mason Mount. He was in that game, but until they made the substitution, it was hard for you to remember that he was even on the playing staff, really, because they were not getting him on the ball as often as they should have. Hi, it's Tamal. Hi, Tamal. I'm so angry for Manchester United. You're angry for Manchester United? Why are you angry? Oh, I completely understand. You are an Arsenal fan, based in the UK. I completely understand. Tamal, briefly, to rewind it a bit back, that's what I was explaining to people, that for Arsenal fans in the UK, they would have rather Manchester United win the Europa League. But for Arsenal fans in Africa, they would have rather Spurs win it as opposed to Manchester United, because the rivalry that exists between Manchester United and Arsenal on the African continent is the equivalent of Arsenal and Tottenham Hotspur in the UK. And the reason for that is simple, especially in Africa, is that African fans do not see Tottenham as a competitor. They do not see themselves at even the same level to be rivals. They look at Spurs as any other mid-table team that plays in the Premier League. That's how they look at it. That a team that is sometimes difficult to beat, a team that they need to beat sometimes. But when it comes to the rivalry games, then it's Manchester United for them that takes, precedent. And I completely understand when you say that you're angry for Manchester United for them failing to win, because I do know what it means for the Arsenal fans within London and within the larger context of the UK and maybe slightly beyond in that respect or in that context. But then on the side of Tottenham Hotspur, I mean, the game was so dull that it's hard to pick moments where you say, okay, they were intentional in doing this. And for me, again, I struggle to sort of look back and say, I noted this moment, and these are the moments that Tottenham Hotspur has created to try and get an advantage over Manchester United, because they just did not do it. they played like two teams. First of all, in the first phase of the game, like two teams that were afraid of one another, that gave each other lots of respect, and then they were afraid to overcommit and that kind of thing. So in the end, we ended up with a very dull game. United having possession but not knowing what to use the ball with. If Tottenham Hotspurs won back possession, they struggled to string five passes or even three in some cases. I mean, that really defines for you the game. You had Tottenham players like Richarlison try to induce fouls which did not go their way. At one point, he goes to the ground, holds onto the ball, thinking that he's going to get the referee to give him a foul. He doesn't give it to him. Instead, gives it against him because he handled the ball and that kind of thing. He commits a stupid foul against Amazori on the other end, gets himself booked. I mean, that was the kind of game. It felt like an amateur football game, really. That's how it felt like. And yet, it was a European final. It was the UEFA Europa League final. As Tottenham Hotspurs ended their 17-year title drought because their last trophy had come back in 2008 when they beat up against Chelsea by 2-1 in the finals of the EFL Cup. That's present day called the Carabao Cup. Mark Goldbridge says, well done Spurs, and Angie Shaiti from Amorim, Shitty from United. Worst performance I've seen in a final from United. Club is rotten to the core. RIP. That is rest in internal peace. So really, that's Mark Goldbridge of That's Football. That's his comment about his congratulatory message to Tottenham Hotspurs. Then Spurs are Europa League champions as they win their first major trophy in 17 years, beating United. That pretty much we already know here now on the channel. I mean, and wherever Ange Postecoglou has been, but anyway, this year in itself has kind of been a year where teams that had not won trophies in a long time went on to win. Newcastle ending their 7th-year trophy drought to win the Carabao Cup, beating up against Liverpool 2-1 in the final. Crystal Palace ending 119 years without a trophy, beating up Man City in the FA Cup final. Then Bologna beating up against AC Milan by 0-0 in the Italian Cup. That's the Italian Cup. Win it in after 51 years. Then a first trophy for Go Ahead Eagles. That's in 92 years, and now Tottenham Hotspurs, the first trophy in 17 years. Safa Ali says, I was expecting a bad performance from Onana in this match, but they couldn't shoot. Onana really didn't have much to do in goal. He really didn't have much to do in goal. And you can see that one scrappy moment is the one that got the better of him, and he turned out to be the match winner at the end of the night. That's how bad the game has been. And yet, Vicario, on the other side, was forced into a couple of saves here and there. And of course, what he had fumbled, Mickey Van de Ven came to his rescue in terms of that. So, really, I can imagine. That's a Mark Goldbridge ranting. He was ranting at the lack of poise in Manchester United. But let's continue with some of the reaction from the UEFA Europa League final and see if there are any catchy comments for us to look to and congratulate Tottenham Hotspur fans. Young Min should be given a statue at Tottenham, rejected offers from top clubs in his prime with the hope of winning a title with the club he loved. Today he did. Congratulations, Young Min. I mean, the celebrations were wild. at the final whistle, pretty much the way you expected. Then, are you still gonna cry, bro? That badge on the shirt ain't where trophies are acquired. As somebody tweeting an angry picture of Bruno Fernandes there, but Tottenham Hotspurs are champions officially. They have lifted it, and it couldn't have been a better night for them. Anyways, we will hear more of it tomorrow. We will hear enough of it tomorrow and see where the conversation goes. But guys, allow me to call it a night. It's already a half past midnight. Allow me to call it a night and wish you guys a wonderful rest of the night. We will link up tomorrow in tomorrow morning's broadcast and digest more of the aftermath of this final as we make sense of what the fans are trying to say where the conversation is leading. But I know United fans are all going to be deflecting with under the guise of banter towards Arsenal to deflect their own losses and their poor performance on the nights. Otherwise, then I can say I'm just happy this horrendous season is finally over. Transfer window. That's a Manchester United fan in Andrew Kabura. What next for Manchester United? A clear out, turn to the academy. Or that's Kasuko Kuku Wazabanga asking. Guys, have yourselves a blessed night. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace. Bye-bye.